Hi, my name's Andy. This is Really Random Reads, and this is my attempt to do the newbie BookTuber tag. I've put off this tag and have taken a little bit of time getting around to it. I kind of wanted to try doing a few videos first and get those under my belt. So that's what I did. I didn't know if I'd actually make it to doing this tag, but I have, so here we are. And the first question is, why did you start this channel? There's a few reasons, and I think it was partly motivated by me not having a particularly great week. That was reason number one. Reason number two is something I've found with books, is you know how just in life, if something happens and as a group of people, a series of people witness that event, then when you talk to them afterwards about what they experienced, they can have very different interpretations. That's pretty much been my experience of reading books, and for the most part, when I watch videos on other people talking about the books that they've read, I'm learning new stuff from them. It's relatively rare that I have like a unique perspective where I think I'm completely the minority voice on this, everybody else saw it a different way. But sometimes that does happen, you know, so that was partly why I wanted to do this video. And maybe the video that I did the other day for the book, the Grady Hendrix book, How to Sell a Haunted House, that was kind of along those lines. I was in the minority for that one. And the final reason is I got a bit of, don't know, is this an old-fashioned habit or maybe, but like when I read a book, after I've read it, I have a notebook and I make some notes on it. One of the reasons I do that was a couple. Helps me think about it, and I start to see things in the book that I wouldn't if I didn't sit down and sort of think in that way. The other one is I like having some sort of shorthand that I can refer back to, because if I don't have those thoughts, I can look at a book way in the future, actually, to be honest, not even that far in the future, and not really remember having read it. But if I have a few notes in it, then I can. And the thing is, with those thoughts on those books, they will just sit there in that notebook, and then one day I will pop my clogs and that notebook will go in the bin, which is the nature of, of life, I suppose. But rather than thoughts, it sounds quite self-indulgent, doesn't it? Rather than thoughts that I sometimes have in terms of books just going nowhere and not sharing them with anyone, I thought to put them on here, and then maybe people would be interested, and if they're not, that's cool. And this is my dog. Second question is, what are some fun and unique things that you can bring to BookTube? I don't think I'm gonna invent anything new with BookTube or do anything that anybody else isn't doing. The main difference maybe with my channel, and it could well be the reason that it just falls on its face and crashes and burns, is I don't have a specific genre or like 3 genres of reading that I could sort of really nail to the post. So the channels I enjoy a lot of horror channels, and that's great, so you know what you're getting. Or I look at channels where they're talking about modern classics or things like that, and again, you kind of know what you're getting. With my one, my reading is, and I don't know, it sounds like this should be a positive thing, but in terms of a YouTube channel, I think it really isn't. My reading is a bit all over the place, so that's why I called it Really Random Books. And if you want to get a taste of that, I guess, you could look at the recent tag video I did for, so the tag is something like things I've been putting off, like books I've been putting off reading. And I've tried in the description of the channel to explain the main types of books I read, but I do just find it really hard to commit to some kind of like, boom, this is unique, this is me, this is what I do. Because yeah, I do flip between sort of like horror books, modern classics, biographies, books about, non-fiction books about war, sort of all over the place. So, it'll either work or it won't. What are you most excited for with this new channel? It is nice to be a beginner at this, and just, that's quite liberating. I really like lots of those videos where they said, don't overthink this, just whack the camera on and off you go, sort of thing. And that is me. I'm not like a super tech savvy person. I see these great videos that are almost like small films. One, Plagued by Visions, does some amazing sort of videos that are like non-pretentious versions of almost like lectures, but also like small short films, and they're incredible. But that's just never going to be me. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes think, if you've got like the Beatles and Abbey Road, and that's amazing, that's so well like put together and produced. But then on the other hand, you have something like Bob Dylan just rocking up and being like and doing an album or something like that. Then in terms of like a style, my style is probably like the slightly coughing one, dog in the background as happened at the beginning of this video, all a bit rough and ready, there'll be wrong notes. But you know, hopefully some people will like it. If they don't, that's all right. What else? Why do you love reading? I really like reading because it can transport you. And when you are reading a really good book, I think you kind of forget that you are reading. And there have definitely been books I've read that I've come away from them and had sounds overly grand, but had sort of like a different outlook on life afterwards, and applied practical things in those books to how I live my life. You know, there was a book I read called Difficult Conversations, which when I had a job where I kind of had to turn around a team, it was a team that had a lot of problems. And that book was such a great practical help to me. But then there are also fiction books where they've made me much more empathetic in situations where I perhaps wouldn't be. So I'm thinking, what have I read that's good in that line? A Little Life, I read relatively recently. I'll put the books I mentioned in the description below. But I came away, I think it's hard to sit down and read that book and then have your next interactions with people be very negative, closed, judgmental ones. And I like books like that, that make you think. So that is why I love reading. And also to say on this one, this is a big one for me. I'm not going to remember the quote correctly, but Chekhov has this really good quote, which is along the lines of, show me the problem well. So in terms of a piece of fiction, I'm not looking for you to give me the answer to some sort of social problem or other problem. Non-fiction might do that. But in terms of fiction, what I'm looking for is for you not to soapbox me, but to show me the problem well and show it from all the different angles that you can. So I empathize with the people that in a less effective piece of work would be the bad people, you know. Show me the problem well. So that's one of the reasons that I really love reading. What book or series got you into reading? When I was a kid, my parents, I was one of those people, my parents read to me stories at night. They have stayed with me. I really liked Roald Dahl, really liked the Twits. And you know, people will talk about Roald Dahl and they say in terms of his adult fiction, it's very dark. His children's fiction can be pretty fucked up too, you know? Like, I remember realising at a young age with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and if I look back on this as an adult, I still think it. The book, I'm not talking about the films here. Maybe with the first film actually. Willy Wonka is like a complicated character. He's not like a good character. And I remember being a kid and reading about that character, and it's like flawed and damaged and yeah, not just like some nice bloke who runs a chocolate factory. So I found that really interesting, and it was also a lesson to me that sequels can be rubbish, because I remember at school I'd enjoyed reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, and then the teacher started to read Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator, which I just thought was really not. I just thought it was a very bad book. And then I remember the disappointment from that. So yeah, a lesson in sequels. But if I'm honest, the book that probably got me into reading, and I feel a bit weird talking about this, it's a bit personal, but it would be the Bible, you know. So I'm an atheist, and have been for a good long time now. And I say that not because if you're watching this, and if you're watching this and you are religious, if you believe in a God, I'm not saying that because I want you to feel sort of like attacked, or I'm not saying that in like an arrogant way, and I certainly am not meaning that you shouldn't be religious. I say that I'm an atheist because I think it is important that if somebody doesn't believe in a God or gods, that they're okay saying that, and that they aren't sort of like made to feel bad for it or that they've done something wrong. But anyway, getting back to the point, when I was a child, my mum and dad were Christians, and my dad's dead now, but my mum is still a Christian. And my dad was actually a vicar, although in my lifetime he was a prison chaplain, so he was working in prisons. And we never actually had any sort of argument or disagreement or even deep conversations about the fact that I ended up an atheist and he was a vicar. But anyway, getting back to the point. So, children's Bible was something that I was like read for. Did I say I wasn't very good at technology when this started out? So yeah, the memory card or whatever it's called on my phone filled up. So to pick up where I left off, yeah, children's Bible. When I was a little kid, sort of, now I'm thinking under 5 I think I was, living in Northumberland, up in the north of England, reading, my parents would read to me the children's Bible, and I remember it was that thing, and I've heard other people do this, or like have experienced this, like you get into some kind of story or whatever, and then your parents will kind of like leave you to get on with it. And if you want to know where it goes badly enough, you kind of force yourself to carry on trying to understand it, and that would happen sometimes at night. And I've never been a good sleeper. I've been awake a lot through the night, and I would like read this stuff through the night. So I internalized a lot of stories from that children's Bible, and when I got older, I read those stories in more conventional Bible. And even though I'm an atheist, I still read the Bible now. I got a version of the King James a couple of years ago in the back, and I read other religious books alongside it, as in like non-Christian books. So yeah, I actually do really, I don't want to say like the Bible, but like appreciate the Bible as a piece of literature. But I see it that way, you see. I don't see it as like a divine text. I read it the way that I might read other pieces of ancient literature. But when I was at school, in secondary school, I do remember a teacher who said to me, or said to all of us, and he was a nice fella, he said, the Bible, sex and violence, like as a book. And that was his way of kind of like selling it to us as something that might be worth having a read of. So I think it was true in that, you know, it's slightly tongue-in-cheek, but there is a lot of sex and violence in the Bible, and a lot of the character arcs and things that you'll find in other fiction, and also in other religions, in my view, you will find in there. So, sorry, that was a bit of a long-winded answer to that one. What questions would you ask your favourite booktubers? If a question occurs to me, I have actually just put it in the comments underneath the videos, and they come back. So Brian at Bookish, probably like a couple of years ago, he did a video on Ernest Hemingway short story that when I first read, I hadn't appreciated at all, didn't really enjoy, but his passion and different way of looking at it made me see it differently, and I think I said something to that effect. It was one of the stories where basically it's a single character out in nature, and it's 2 short stories, part 1 and part 2, if I remember correctly. And that's really hard to do, I think, to have a character that is just completely on their own, and for the reader to stay engaged with that. And I didn't stay engaged the first time I read it. But then I heard Brian's perspective, and I went back to it, and I did. And then other things like, who else have I commented on? You know, there was a couple of booktubers, they probably wouldn't realise it was me, because they hadn't seen me. But Olly and Jenny, Ollie's at Criminal Olly and Jenny's at 13 O'Clock Podcast. They really helped me once, about a year ago maybe, by giving me some feedback on something. And yeah, so I like that, people are super approachable on this. And the answer to the question of what question would I ask is I can't think of any, because if I've had questions, I've kind of already asked them. Yeah, what else is there? So next question, what challenges do you think, what challenges do you think starting a BookTube channel will be the hardest to overcome technology-wise so far? The camera's fallen off twice. That happened in the first video. It's actually sellotaped to some yoga blocks. Running out of space on the phone now has happened to me twice, and I don't know why, because I don't really go around filming stuff. It's probably just videos of the dog. And having a name, really random reads, I got there in the end, and the name does sum up what the channel is, but as I said at the beginning, there's the big problem as well. Is a BookTube channel that is so random gonna be interesting to people? You might dip in because you see a title that you're interested in, and then you are not interested in anything else on the channel at all, so you just go away again. But you know, what have I got to lose, really? And oh yeah, here's one. Not saying what you mean. So if I think I've said what I meant, but if it comes over entirely differently, and that is quite possible. Happened to me the other day, actually. I was on the train, I was with my partner and the dog, and there was a group of people who were probably sort of like teenage aged, down the other train, end of the train, looking at the dog was looking down there, and one of the guys was saying, laughing, like really uncontrollably laughing, saying and he said, I heard him say, like, that's the most depressed dog I've ever seen. And the dog Pickle wasn't looking depressed, she was just like looking down the train, I guess. And I didn't mean this in a confrontational way, but I called down the train, and I was just like have a chat. If somebody has a chat with me in public, I'll have a chat. I didn't mean this as like trying to start aggro, but I called down the train, meaning genuinely, maybe she's looking at you. And what I meant was, maybe she just happens to be looking in your direction. But what I realised after getting off the train and talking to my partner, as she tapped me on the shoulder and said, I don't want to have to, she works in like a secure place. She said, I don't want to have to de-escalate an incident. Was that came over maybe sounding like quite aggressive, and that the dog had looked at him and therefore felt depressed. But I don't know, it was all right in the end, and actually we continued that conversation, me and these random strangers, and then they came over and we had a good chat together, and it turned out it was his birthday, it was also the dog's birthday, and it was all positive and uplifting, and they went off and all was well. But it was a lesson to me that what you think you mean can often come across quite differently. If that does happen on this channel, then there isn't any malice in it, there's nothing badly intended. If I was in a really bad mood and wanted to be horrible to people, then I would not sit down and make a video and put it on the internet. What else? Nearly there. When did you start reading? I've answered that question. Where do you read? Often laying in bed, sometimes in the back room. I have a weird habit of just sitting on the floor, so I'm like sat on the floor now. I would say with this one, I really fight not to sub-vocalize. So that's where you're reading a book and you hear the words in your head. And I didn't realize I did that until watching some YouTube videos, but I do it and I've always done it. And I find it an incredibly difficult thing to switch off. And sometimes I like it. So like Brian at Bookish was talking about this. If I'm reading dialogue, particularly if that dialogue is say like something set in the South in America, I enjoy, in my head, I hear what I think is that type of accent and enjoy that. But there are lots of books that I read that aren't, say, you know, if I'm reading a Victorian novel and it's just describing the countryside, I don't mean just, that can be a good thing. But I don't want to be sub-vocalising that, but I have a hard job at switching that off. For this reason, I find it really hard to read in like a cafe, on public transport, if there's noise going on, people talking, stuff like that. Maybe I need to do that more to help switching sub-vocalisation off. Yeah, that's my response to this one. What kind of books do you like to read is the final question, and it is all over the place. So fiction, do you know what, I'm not going to repeat the things I've already said in this video there earlier, and this is probably already long enough. So if you're interested in that, just have a look. A bit earlier in the video I talk about it. thank you very much for staying with me and watching this. I hope you have a really good day or evening, night, morning, wherever you are. And yeah, cheers.